Thank you, Lascan Corla. Minister, this question arises from the recent publication of the Childcare Law Reporting Project of a report where they looked at 30 cases relating to childcare cases before the courts. 3 of those cases related to asylum seekers and direct provision. And in one of those cases, a judge refused to, or was not happy to allow children to go back into the care of their mother in direct provision because of the circumstances that they had to live under. And the question asks you to consider allowing families with children to actually move out of direct provision and live in the community so that they can have
Number 65, Minister.
The question refers to Volume 3 of the reports and proceedings taken under the Childcare Act 1991, recently published by the Childcare Law Reporting Project on its website. That project has been established to examine and report on childcare proceedings in the courts, the aim of which is to provide information to the public and policymakers on childcare proceedings and to promote debate. The project aims to report on about a 10% sample of the cases taken under the Childcare Act of 1991. 3 of the cases reported in Volume 3 relate to emergency care orders sought for children in asylum accommodation centres which operate under the contract of the Reception and Integration Agency, or RIA, of my department. In all such cases, it is the HSE who make an application to the court for an emergency care order, and RIA would not be a party to the proceedings. In 2 of the reported cases, the issue was the mental health of the mother, and in the remaining case, the issue arose from the detention of the mother. There is no evidence, neither from this project nor from the HSE, that there is a disproportionate number of cases under the Childcare Act 1991 involving asylum seekers in the direct provision system relative to the population generally. Moreover, as with the mental health cases cited in the report, centre managers and RIA Child and Family Service Unit are often in a position where they have a better oversight of a family's situation than would be the case of the family residing in the wider community. Even without knowing the full details of these cases, it is clear from the reports that the child protection policy and processes within RIA and the HSE worked properly. In relation to the suggestion that families living in direct provision be allowed to live in the community, it is important to note that of the 4,344 persons living in 34 direct provision centres around the country, approximately 2/3 live in family units. The direct provision system remains a necessary feature of the state's asylum and immigration system, and I have no plans to end it at this time. Since I took up office, however, in March 2011, the number of persons being accommodated in direct provision has fallen by over 25%.
I have to interrupt, Minister.
Nonetheless, just finish one sentence.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
These are the standing orders I have to operate. Deputy Pringle, 1 minute.
Thank you, Minister, for your response. Unfortunately, I think anybody who has worked with the asylum seekers and is familiar with the direct provision system and all the NGOs that are involved in it know that the direct provision has serious implications for people's mental health. I was involved myself with a support group in Donegal Town for many years, and there was serious mental health issues for the residents in the direct provision hostels there. And I believe it is a direct result of the system of direct provision itself. Earlier today, there was a protest outside the gate, protesting against the racism and institutionalised racism that has taken place, unfortunately, in this country. And I believe that the system of direct provision is a very stark example of institutionalised racism, where people are not dealt with humanely, they're not dealt with as human beings. And I think that to continue to allow children and families to live under that system, in some cases where children are actually born into direct provision and have lived under it all their lives, and there is no doubt in my mind and in many NGOs across this country that direct provision itself is harmful to the mental health of the residents of the hostels. And in the interests of children and their families, we should be looking to change that and change it urgently.
Minister.
Well, can I firstly reject the Deputy's allegation that direct provision is institutionalised racism. Direct provision is providing accommodation over the heads of individuals, children and families who come to this country and claim asylum. Without direct provision, they would have no accommodation. Direct provision is providing better accommodation than is provided in many of the other European Union member states, and it provides them not only with accommodation but subsistence and additional benefits. And direct provision, and the Deputy should recall, is a method that ensures that people have accommodation that is necessary pending their asylum applications being dealt with. Now, I would much prefer we had a system where these applications were dealt with a great deal speedier. Now, one of the issues that arises is because we have a system where, first of all, you apply for asylum, and then if you fail, you apply for leave to remain, and if you fail on that one, you might, on humanitarian grounds, be asked to stay.
Thank you, Minister.
The process takes too long, and a substantial proportion of those currently in direct provision are individuals who've been denied asylum, individuals who have been determined not to be in need of asylum but are economic migrants, who are challenging those conclusions in the courts by taking judicial review cases. There's over 1,000 of those judicial review cases. What I want to do is introduce legislation which allows all of these decisions to be made in the first instance, without the long periods that now take place.
Thank you, Minister.
Allow those who are genuinely entitled to asylum to stay in our country and be part of the overall community. And where people are economic migrants seeking to get around our visa and immigration requirements, the state is in a position to have them removed from the country.
Deputy Pringle, any further supplementary?
Minister, the system that you talk about to streamline the process and to speed up the process, we've been waiting on for that legislation since this government came into power, and there still is no further sign of it. And many people are in limbo because their cases have come to a standstill now while we're waiting for this legislation to come into play, and that is further compounding their difficulties that they are experiencing. But I would say that the system of direct provision, as I know it and as I've experienced it over 12 years of working with asylum seekers, is basically a system of open prisons. And it is not a system that we should be proud of, and we should not be claiming that it's better than most other European countries. What we should be doing is putting in place a humane system that allows people after a reasonable period of time to actually live and participate in the community and encourage integration, which actually would go some way to maybe reducing incidences of racism as well in this country, and deal with the cases expeditiously, and if people have to be sent home, do that quickly rather than putting them through this torture that
Thank you,
they're going
Deputy.
through.
Final reply.
Well, firstly, I'd remind the Deputy that no individual seeking asylum is required to live in direct provision accommodation. There are indeed quite a number of individuals who end up living outside that system. But it's there in circumstances where they have no resources of their own. Now, the Deputy seems to be suggesting that what we should do is that every single individual who comes to Ireland in violation of our immigration laws, without a visa, and who is an economic migrant, should be provided in this country automatically with housing, with social welfare payments, with free education for their children, with free health care. If the Deputy wants 50 to 100,000 people who are economic migrants to descend into this state in circumstances in which this state has to meet all of these financial obligations, I'd ask the Deputy to identify where the resources will come from. What we have is a duty that I believe is hugely important, to ensure that where an individual is genuinely in need of asylum, to ensure that where they're in need of protection, that this state provides that protection, and we have a system that extends it to them and deals with matters with some reasonable speed and allows them to live in the wider community. But we also have an obligation to everyone who lives in this state to ensure that our systems aren't abused.
Thank you, Minister.
Now, in conclusion, if I could say to the Deputy, I agree with the Deputy. It's been unduly lengthy producing the legislation that I've been anxious to see. We will see it in 2014. The delay in producing it has been nothing other than a result of the obligations the state has had to implement various other legislative measures,
Thank you, Minister.
and which have had to be given a priority in the Attorney General's office.
Move on to other questions.